WHPC to your smart speaker.
90.3 WHPC.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC. We're also streaming on nccradio.org. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. Guess what? This program is repeated every Sunday evening at 11 p.m. for your convenience. So, hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This, of course, all depends on when you are listening or watching. Gewalt, I nearly forgot. We can be seen on Facebook Live at WHPC or my own page at facebook.com/Pearl. If you wish to post a comment or a thought, we'd love to recognize that. And of course, to everybody out there on the radio land, welcome. Thank you for joining us each and every Sunday at 8 a.m. So hello on the radio, hello online, hello to the world. I want to begin our program today, as I did yesterday in my synagogue, that as much as we would like to imagine that life is just going on and we're going about our professions and our activities and our jobs and whatever it may be, we all know that underneath the surface, it's not the way it should be. It really is far from what we would call normal. And of course, you can understand what I'm discussing and why I'm saying this, because of the current unrest in the world, the unrest in Israel, the war in Israel, the Gaza, the reasons and everything that's going on. And of course, the unrest that we find ourselves here in the United States on campuses. So I'd like to begin by sharing with you the comments of Howard Kleinberg that was just recently posted on the Jerusalem Post on February the 2nd, way back. This is way back in the year 2015. Right? Unless you may not know it, we're now at 2024. So 2015, this individual, Howard Kleinberg, posted the following, and I want to share this with you. And even as I begin, I'd like to first say hello to Linda Zellickson. Good morning. To Miriam Odia David, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to say hello to Eitan Kelshevsky, who quite rightly reminds us all that this evening starts the Memorial Day in Israel. And of course, honoring the 24,000 Israelis who gave their life defending their homeland. And of course, this year, our mind is also thinking about October the 7th. So welcome to you. Thank you. And to Jean Brandenstein. So let me first begin with what Howard Kleinberg shared with us. Stand by, everybody. When we were led into the gas chambers, you said nothing. When we were forcibly converted, you said nothing. When we were thrown out of a country just for being Jews, you said nothing. When we now defend ourselves, all of a sudden, you have something to say. How did we take our revenge on the Germans for their final solution? How did we take revenge on the Spanish for their Inquisition in 1492? How did we take revenge on Islam for being diminished? How did we take revenge on the lies of the protocols of Zion? It continues. Do you know how we took revenge? We studied our Torah. We innovated in medicine. We innovated in defense systems. We innovated in technology. We innovated in agriculture. We made music. We made poetry. We made the desert bloom. We won Nobel Prizes. We financed democracy. We fulfilled the word of Hashem by becoming a light unto the nations of the earth. So, world, hello. When you criticize us for defending our heritage and our ancestral homeland, we, the Jews of the world, do exactly what you did. We ignore you. You have proven to us for the last 2,000 years that when the chips are down, You don't care. Now leave us alone and go sort out your own backyard whilst we continue our 5,784-year-old mission of enhancing the world that we all share. Continuing now, I want to address one of the problems that we face today. And amazingly, I would say, there is surprisingly an historic opportunity going on right now. And to put it succinctly, the university crisis actually provides us with an amazing opportunity. What am I going to discuss? A broader issue, a broader concern, and a broader opportunity. And that is, that undermines or underscores the danger when my comfort zones and my fears become my God. You know, Jack Duval said the following: God loves the birds and invented trees. Man loved the birds and invented cages. Our universities have been a source of longing for countless American Jewish families. We all know the history of Jewish immigrant parents coming to the United States, laboring tirelessly to send their children to higher educational institutions with a purpose where they could become integrated into the larger society and build successful futures. And by and large, it was successful. So the chaos that we are observing in the universities today, with protesters, including many Jews, calling for the death of their own people, the destruction of their homeland, and the country, the great United States of America, that has given them so much freedom, is horrific and tragic beyond words. Still, like every crisis, it contains an historic opportunity for rebirth. The present moral confusion of so many students and their academic leaders offers us the opportunity to reflect, to pause, and to show and to teach a whole generation, and for all of us individuals, to recognize how twisted the human mind can become when it's divorced from truth. How when we strip God from all of reality and are left to figure things out with our brilliance alone, guess what? The Hitlers, the Stalins, the Bin Ladens, the Nasrallahs, whatever, all of them, they actually can become tzaddikim. They can become righteous. As King David points out in Psalm chapter 111, Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem, that the true genesis of all wisdom must be based on the awe of God. Without respect for God, without the recognition that there is something called reality, there is a truth in the universe, enlightened academics can align themselves with murderers, with rapists, and genocidal terrorists. We must remember that, because you can find all kinds of monsters out there. When you work out or write out a logic that does not include God. Because without that respect for absolute truth, you can produce such individuals who can actually call for the death and the rape of 6 million Jews. The protesters at the universities have turned their views and perspectives into a god and are stuck in a new form of idol worship, not open to challenging themselves in any real way. Guess what? This kind of dogma creates the death of ideas and all emotional, intellectual, and spiritual growth. So, there is an amazing historic opportunity right now. And what is that? That we must stop, step back a few feet, look, take the bigger picture in, and actually say goodbye to an idol that we have created that can be entitled higher secular education. Because as we are seeing, it can be corrupt, it can be sinister, and can even be a breeding ground for Nazi supporters. We must take this opportunity to educate a new generation with the timeless, eternal values of Torah and mitzvahs. Because that's where we find and that we are taught what sanity is, what decency is, what honesty is, and what the sanctity of life is all about. Because with that approach, this will allow us and our children and grandchildren to learn to distinguish between good and evil, death and life, and truly celebrate the sanctity of life. It was only yesterday, as we gathered, we studied the Torah portion of Kedoshim. And there we are instructed with the following words: do not make gods out of cast metal. Now, think about this. How could any intelligent person believe a piece of metal is a god? We could perhaps appreciate how ancient pagan societies would attribute divine qualities to some powerful, transcendent force of nature. Let's say the zodiac signs, the sun, the moon, the galaxies, the wind, the fire. But why would a thoughtful human believe God could be fashioned out of cast metal? So even if we can explain how such an idea could have been entertained seriously in the old ancient pagan world, how does this commandment, this teaching from the Torah, which is a timeless blueprint for human life, how could it apply to our lives today? And I'm going to share with you an insight that I came across that deals with this and gives us an insight to our life today. And that is, what does it mean, do not make yourselves gods out of cast metal? It's really going to the essence of the problems that we are facing in our society. What it means is telling us not to construct a god of a lifestyle that has become like cast metal. One that is cast and solidified in a fixed mold. Let me explain. There's a natural human tendency to worship what we have become comfortable with. We worship our habits, our patterns, our attitudes, our routines, and inclinations. Why? Because we have accustomed ourselves to them, and they are now part of our lives. We worship the icons, the culture, the perspective, and the emotions that we have been raised with. Guess what? We actually surrender ourselves to what has become the norm in our communities, in our schools, and even our homes. You see, people love that which does not surprise them. We want to enjoy God that suits our philosophical and emotional paradigms and comfort zones. We tend to embrace a fixed and molten God. And I share this with you because this is true for both those who call themselves religious and those who call themselves secular. This is addressed to the believers or those self-proclaimed atheists or agnostics. What do they all say in different ways? Hey, don't rock my neural pathways. I've already have an established God. Do not threaten it. I have my own ways of thought and life systems, which I am used to. Hey, don't challenge it. If you do, I will have no choice but to dismiss you as some heretic or some low-class boor. Sometimes, even a religious person invests his or her entire life into constructing a particular image of God, of truth, of ultimate reality. To let go of that is simply too painful for that individual. To even entertain the idea that my entire religion may be man-made in so many ways is profoundly challenging. If you speak to so many people today who call themselves, I quote, secular, they call themselves scientific, they consider themselves free of dogma and indoctrination, you can notice how they too often have created secular gods, which one may never challenge or question. It is appalling how, in the name of openness and tolerance, people can become so vengeful and supportive of pure evil as we see around us today. Along comes the Torah and declares, "Do not turn your pre-established mold into your God. Do not turn your habits, natural patterns of thought, fears, inclinations, or addictions into a deity." Dear friends, let's allow ourselves to search for the truth, the real truth, the naked, raw, and authentic, even if it's painful. You see, life is about challenging, not conformity. Let's allow our soul to be enchanted by the mystery. Let us never say, "This is the way I am. This is how I do things. I cannot change." Never think, "This is the worldview I am comfortable with. Any other way must be wrong." Rather, our challenge of today is to muster the courage to challenge every instinct, every temptation, and convention. We are challenged today to question every dogma, even including dogmas that speak in the name of open-mindedness and are embraced simply because you fall back on that which you have been taught again and again. Let our lives not become enslaved to a particular pattern just because it has been that way for many years or decades. You see, God, the real God, is not defined by any conventions. Let your soul, too, not be confined by any external conventions. Let's experience the freedom of what the Creator provides us. Often, we fall prey to a certain image of what our lives are supposed to look like, what our marriages or children are supposed to look like, what our mission is supposed to look like. But you know what? There is another way of fashioning our God with the tools of our understanding. There comes a point that I need to open myself up to the possibility that perhaps my purpose in life is completely different than what I imagined. And this is the clincher. I need to stop asking what I want from God and start asking what God wants from me. It's a serious paradigm shift, but it sets us free. Judaism never articulates who God is and what God looks like. It teaches us what God does not look like. Why? Because God ought never to be defined by any image that we attribute to God. Because our images, if we're open and honest, how we see things and define things is hewn by the instruments of our own limited conscious and subconscious needs, the fears of change, and what our true aspirations should really be. So in Jewish philosophy, never mind in Kabbalah and Hasidic thought, we never speak of what God is, only of what he is not. Because God is not an extension of my being or my imagination. The common Yiddish term for God, used by some of the greatest Jewish mystics and thinkers and holy men and women, is Eibishter. It's a Yiddish word, Eibishter, some say it, which means higher. They don't speak of God being the creator, the master, the all-powerful, but the word Eibishter, higher. Why? What this term represents is this idea. I do not know what he is. All I know is that whatever my definition of truth and reality, whatever my definition of God is, he is higher than that. All I know is that I do not know. To be open to God of the Torah means to be open to a never-ending mystery, to the infinite grandeur, to limitlessness and possibilities. It is the profound readiness at any moment of our life to open up ourselves to transcendence. And guess what? What was transcendent yesterday, that means all that we've accomplished in a positive way yesterday, can actually become a form of exile today. Because transcendence itself must also be transcendent. For it too can become a trap. And that which remains of our ambitions and desires after we have faced all of our fears and challenges and defenses, that is where the will of God's, that's where we meet up with God's will. At that point, when a person can say, I may know a lot, but I'm willing and I'm open to something higher than an open-mindedness in the true sense, that is the point of complete humility and sincerity of the individual. Because at that point, we become truly one with who we are, with our true inner core of our reality. And in the words of the Zohar, no thought, no idea can grasp him, yet he can be grasped with the pure desire of the heart. I say good morning to everybody joining us on the radio. A special hello to Jeffrey Hirsch on Facebook, Lavana Lichter, Barbara Weinstein, Mark Pintel, who joins us each week from Jupiter, Florida. I'm glad he put the word Florida in, because I thought maybe he's actually on the planet Jupiter. Hello from Larry Swenson, unbelievable. Labeler, good morning to you and to everybody joining us. I want to make sure that we have everybody recognized. Stacy Hirsch Lambert, thank you so much. And Karen Dumbeck and Tom Schwartz. Wow, everybody's joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to facebook.com/my name, Anshul Pearl, and join us on Facebook. You're listening to us on WHBC. This is really a Farbrengen, a special gathering for all of us. Now, with all that's going on in the world around us, and as I said, all of us, unless you're living under a rock, can appreciate that the world isn't the way it should be. And another dimension of the world around us is another problem, is about how we judge each other. How do we judge each other? Guess what? Again, we turn to the Torah portion and contains such a commandment. It's very famous. It says, with justice you shall judge your fellow man. The Talmud gives two different interpretations for this verse. According to one opinion, when we talk about your justice you shall judge, is a verse directed to judges. When a person comes to a judgment in a civil case, according to Torah law, the judge must treat the litigants equally. He's not allowed to have one litigant stand and the other one sit. One to speak at length and the other urged to speak briefly, and so forth. It has to be a balance. However, according to a second interpretation in the Talmud, this injunction, this verse, is directed to every one of us. Its intent is that every one of us, not only judges, but every one of us must judge our fellow with justice. As the Talmud puts it, judge your fellow man to the side of merit. Don lekaf schus. A similar expression we find in the Ethics of the Fathers. You should judge every person to the side of merit. But what does that mean? And I must tell you, this is something that I struggle with at all times. You're dealing with all kinds of people, all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of affiliations. And how does a person help themselves not to be judgmental of other people? I don't know if you have that challenge, but I do, constantly. As I say, welcome to many, many joining us online and listening to us. So what does this mean? How can we change our instincts which is typically to condemn? You see, on the most basic level, it causes us to give people the benefit of the doubt. If we see a person doing something that apparently seems to be an act that he or she should not be doing, guess what? There's a fully fledged biblical command to give that person the benefit of the doubt. Upon observing another person doing or saying something we perceive as undesirable or destructive, we all know, let's be honest, many of us instinctively assume that negative motives are compelling these acts and words. We naturally believe that the person is aware of the damage he or she is creating, and despite this, he's doing it for his own benefit or for some agenda. This attitude has plagued us for millennia and has caused, I know this won't be comfortable, this kind of attitude has caused untold harm and divisiveness in so many communities. So we must learn to judge people favorably, to attribute positive or at least neutral motives to people's acts and words. And here I add the fact that I would say over the last more than nearly 3 decades, or maybe even more, in my work, Baruch Hashem, as a chaplain in drug rehabs, currently at the correctional center, and many other strange places, this is something that I deal with every moment. When you're sitting in a room with inmates, or you're sitting in a rehab, and you see people who have messed up their lives, the natural reaction is to say, you deserve it. You're rotten. You did this and you did that. My friends, I don't think that way. Not because I'm some holy roller, but I've come to appreciate, don't judge someone until you're in their shoes. Say to yourself, he or her, or his or her behavior might appear wrong, but in his own mind and heart, he really thinks he's doing the right thing. So the approach of condemning the behavior, but not the purpose or not the person, is counterintuitive. But it is tremendously beneficial to be able to handle that, to say, that's not the person, that's just his actions. And I'll share with you for 2 reasons. Because when you're able to alter your attitude, you'll not become resentful. When you attribute evil motives to a person performing a negative act, guess what? Your brain instinctively swells with negative energy. On the other hand, if you train yourself to view a person unlike his behavior and view it in a positive light, you save your heart from being consumed by ire, and you actually stop paying free rent for all kinds of negativity in your head. A second reason, an important reason. because you will be in much better position if your outlook is more positive to be able to communicate your feelings to this person in trying to help them and uplift them without compelling him to construct a defense mechanism and reciprocate your rebuke or your words with stubbornness and anger. One of my, how would I call it, favorite terms when I sit down at the correctional center, and I'm wearing my suit and my hat and my beard and everything else for the occasion, just joking, and everybody else is sitting in their prison garb, I tell them right there on the first day I meet them, I don't care what you're wearing. I'm not going to judge you by what I see here. We're here to talk to each other as human to human and how we can help each other to transcend our lives. If I came in with a negative attitude and started pointing my finger or not being able to listen, so many people I know have never had the chance to be listened to. They're always been put down in all kinds of situations. But if you come in with an attitude that I care for you, I respect you, you have a place, and you can become a productive member of society, guess what? There's an atmosphere of joy. We sometimes sing when we get together. Sometimes we share with each other. I make a point of coming in with a joke. Not always do they laugh. They usually laugh at me rather than the joke. But seriously, when that person feels that inside your heart, you don't see him or her as a bad guy who craves destruction, but only as a good guy who made an error, guess what? Your relationship, your friendship will be really most effective. So let's think about ourselves. If someone approaches you and criticizes your behavior, when is that person more likely to be successful? When that person attributes negative motives, and I experience it all the time, when you have a conversation and that conversation is not going the way they have created in their mind, they see you as the enemy. They don't want to hear what you have to say. So when he attributes negative motives to you, is he going to listen? Think about it. When there's a commonality, there's a respect for each other, then each person has something to share and learn from each other. Obviously, the answer is obvious. This means that if you truly are bothered by what a person did, the best way to eliminate, to show and to guide such behavior in the future is to judge that person favorably. I want to share with you a story from the famous composer and storyteller, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, of blessed memory. He tells of a story of a Shabbat that he spent in a community in post-war Europe. When he came to the synagogue on the Shabbat, he was disappointed with the cantor. The man was skipping words, had a feeble, timorous voice. Worse still, his pronunciations of the Hebrew text was dreadful. So Shlomo Carlebach thought to himself, that horrible cantor must have paid off the synagogue to let him pray. He was so disgusted, he decided to go to a side room and pray alone. He would only come to the main shul to listen to the Torah reading. When he returned for the Torah reading, he noticed that the cantor holding the Torah and leading it to the bima was being supported by two people. As he looked closer, he realized that the chazan, that's the cantor, he was blind. So Shlomo asked the person near him, "Who is this chazan? Who is this cantor?" And the man explained, before the war, he was a chief cantor of the grand Jewish community of Lemberg, Lvov, in Poland. When he conducted the services there, his voice was as powerful as a lion's roar. It shook the very pillars of the synagogue and penetrated the heart of every worshipper. From all over Europe, Jews came to listen to his heart-stirring prayers. Then the Nazis came. This cantor was sent to Auschwitz, where he endured unspeakable torture. He became blind. He survived the death camp, but he lost his vision, his voice, and his diction. We always beg him to pray for us, the man continued the story, but he always refuses. But today he agreed. Guess what? Shlomo Kalabach, wanted to bury himself from inner shame. And he continues, overwhelmed by my sense of guilt and shame, I waited for the old cantor to approach. When he did, holding the Torah scroll, I kissed his saintly hands. And the cantor said, who just kissed my hands? And they told him, Shlomo Kalabach. He said, Shlomo, I love your nigunim. I love your melodies. Shlomo Kalabach concludes, he gave me back my soul. How quick he was to judge the cantor. But he was open enough, true to himself, that he made a mistake. Another insight on this perspective, comes from Steve Covey in his famous book, The 7 Habits. He tells a story of him traveling one Sunday morning on a subway in New York. People were sitting quietly, some reading newspapers, some lost in thought, some resting with their eyes closed. It was a calm, peaceful scene. Then suddenly a man and his children entered the subway car. The children were so loud and rambunctious that instantly the whole climate changed. The man sat down next to me and closed his eyes, apparently oblivious to the situation. The children were yelling back and forth, throwing things, even grabbing people's newspapers. It was very disturbing. And yet the man sitting next to me did nothing. It was difficult not to feel irritated. I could not believe that he could be so insensitive as to let his children run wild and do nothing about it, taking no responsibility. It was easy to see that everyone in the subway felt irritated too. So finally, with what I felt was an unusual patience and restraint, Steve turned to him and said, Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you couldn't control them a little more. The man lifted his gaze as if to come to consciousness of the situation for the first time, and he said very softly, Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. And then he continued, We've just come from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either. Can you imagine what I felt at that moment? Covey concludes his story. This is the truth of life. We know nothing of the trials, the sorrows, and the temptations of those around us, of pillows wet with sobs, of the life tragedy that may be hidden behind a smile, of the secret cares, struggles, and worries that shorten life and leave their mark, in hair prematurely turning white, and a character changed and almost recreated in just a few days. Let us not dare to add to the burden of another the pain of your judgment, of our judgment. That's what the Torah is telling us this week. Let us think before we speak. You never know the whole story of that person's life. The Talmud itself tells an interesting story in this vein. Once a man went from the Upper Galilee in the northern Israel to work for an employer in the south for 3 years. So on the eve of the Yom Kippur of the third year, he says to employer, Please give me my wages. I'd like to go back to the north to support my wife and my children. The employer says to him, I do not have any money to pay you. So the worker says, Give me fruit instead. I have no fruit, answers the employer. Give me land. I do not have any land, answers the employer. Give me animals, says the worker. I do not have any animals, answers the employer. Give me quilts and pillows. I do not have any quilts and pillows, answers the employer. The worker packed his bags and went home, disappointed. After the holiday, the employer now travels north to the worker's home with the man's wages with 3 donkeys. One was laden with food, the second with drinks, and the third with all kinds of delicacies. When he arrived, after they had eaten and drunk together, the employer gave the worker his wages and all of the gifts and said to him, "When you asked me for your wages and I told you that I did not have any money, did you think that that was the truth?" And the man answered, "I thought that you had obtained merchandise at a bargain price and had spent all the money." The employer continued, "When you asked me for the animals and I told you that I did not have any animals, what did you think? Did you think this was the truth?" "I thought," he said, "they were all rented out to others." The employer said to him, "When you asked me for the land and I told you that I did not have any land, what did you think? Was I telling the truth?" "I thought," the man answered, "that the land also was rented out to others." The employer said to him, "When you asked me for fruit and I told you I did not have any fruit, what did you think? Was I telling the truth?" "I thought," said the worker, "that the fruit had not been tithed and therefore could not give it to me." The employer said to him, "After you asked me for the quilts and pillows and I told you that I did not have any, what did you think? That I was telling the truth?" "I thought," said the worker, "that you had given it all away, your possessions, to the temple by making a vow of hektish." That means pledging everything he had to the temple. And the employer said, "I swear to you that that is exactly what happened. I had promised away all of my possessions to the holy temple because of my son who was not living the right way, and I wanted to make sure that he would not have anything as my heir, as an inheritance. But when I came to my friends in the south and they told me I was wrong to do this, they annulled my vows." This is, in summation, my friends, just as you judge me favorably, so may God judge you favorably. So in summation, this is how I would wrap this up. In the conventional understanding of this Torah injunction to judge every human being meritoriously, it consists of 3 points. If you hear your fellow say something or see him do something, and you can interpret it as being moral or immoral, give him or her the benefit of the doubt, as the Talmud story I just shared with you, where the employee did not immediately assume that his employer was lying. Or in the story of Shlomo Kalabach or Stephen Covey, where their perceptions actually clouded the true story. Even if you know, a second point that we can learn, even if you know for sure that the person did or said something wrong, attribute to him positive motives. He may think he's doing the right thing. Guess what? Even if you know that he's doing the wrong thing, he knows he's doing something wrong, be careful before judging him. What do we learn? Do not judge your fellow until you are in his place. This is what the ethics of the fathers warn us. And his place is one place where you will never be. You have no way of truly appreciating the manner in which his or her inborn nature, his background, or the circumstances that hold sway over that person's life that have influenced him, his character, or his behavior. Let us remember that that person's struggles are not yours. Perhaps if I would have the same struggles, I would just behave just as bad, or guess what? I may even be worse than the other guy. Yes, you may be an addict, and I am not. But if I would have had the same sensitivities as you, if I would have endured the same abuse as you, I am so sure that I would not. How sure can I be that I too would have sold my soul to addiction? So forget about it. Stop judging other people. Go about it in this thoughtful way. That's the message that we have. That's what's implied in the words of our sages. Havedon es kol ha'adam lekaf schus, translates, judge every person favorably. The word kol ha'adam can mean all persons, every person, or you can more specifically, the word kol ha'adam can be translated not that all people, but the kol ha'adam, the whole person. When you see someone, don't just judge him by his words or whatever in some limited way. See the whole person. See the whole personality. Try to understand where they come from. Before you judge someone, you should first have to know the whole person. Everything about this person, from their background to the workings of their inner psychic to the challenges that they are facing today. Let us live this way, and I promise you, we will live a much happier life, besides being far more effective. And with that, dear friends, I'd like to, in honor of Mother's Day and the joy that we need, I'd like to now share the next moments of our program with some nice, beautiful Jewish music, and wishing everybody a wonderful Mother's Day with good news for the entire world.